And we are back. It is PEP Talks Uncut. We are here today with Dylan Altemara. And Dylan, I wanted to ask you this really quick question since we're in our rapid fire round.
Sure.
Uh, if you were in a position to lure businesses and corporations to set up shops or factories or manufacturing plants here in Pennsylvania, what would be your elevator pitch?
That Pennsylvania is a partner that's open for business, but I want to emphasize that we are a partner. So it can't be a race to the bottom. If you're willing to invest, in us and in our communities and in our workforce and in our tax base, we're more than willing to work with you. But it really does have to be a relationship thought of and emphasized as a partnership. And as long as we can go ahead and build out those types of understandings in advance, I think we're willing and able to accommodate whatever type of business it is.
Would you be more inclined or less inclined to bring in a corporation that is going to set up a massive factory but has have most of the work done by robots?
No, because there's really no upside to the workers here in Pennsylvania. I think, ultimately we have to be honest. Through years of really bad trade deals and bad economic development deals, we've gotten to a point where, jobs that at one time existed that allowed folks to feed themselves and their family don't exist. And so, while AI might be at the cutting edge as far as making a lot of processes better, the truth of the matter is it's also at the forefront of taking more jobs off the board. So, I think any project that doesn't necessarily prioritize growing as many jobs as possible that can be done by, living, breathing human beings, I don't see the upside. And unfortunately, because of some of the tax loopholes that exist, even if these, facilities came online and did not provide very much in the way of work, the truth is they're not really providing that much as far as tax benefits to the state either. So it really has to be a situation where jobs are prioritized. And if we ever do get down the road where it's more of an AI dynamic, where it's more computers and less humans, then what does the tax benefit look like to make sure that Pennsylvania is not getting the short end of the deal on the profits that those companies are earning?
So let's combine the two thoughts together. What tax incentives can the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania offer to businesses that are interested in installing electric vehicle chargers on their premises, whether that be within a parking lot or maybe at a gas station?
No. So I think that's, it's an interesting question I really haven't thought of. As far as, what tax incentives can be offered, I think, the IRA did provide, I think, an initial framework as far as, what can be done as far as renewable energy investments concerned. And I think to give you a direct answer, I'm not 100% as knowledgeable in terms of what those particular incentives can look like. But certainly, not only would I be open to looking into it and coming back to you with it, but I think at the same time, I'm sure there has to be other states, other jurisdictions that have had some sort of success on that issue. And I think what makes sense to Pennsylvania is to, copycat the most sensible policies that have previously been implemented, if that touches on the question.
It does. It does. Across Pennsylvania, there have been a number of cases where uh, district attorneys are afraid to enforce hate crimes laws.
Mhm.
They shy away from them for whatever reason. In some
Right,
cases, it's just very difficult to prove.
right.
What changes do you think are necessary to hate crimes legislation, or in Pennsylvania's case, ethnic intimidation
Mhm.
legislation, that would strengthen the bill to protect communities such as the LGBTQ plus community?
I think first and foremost, what we need to do is we need to establish a committee that is willing to hear testimony from a lot of the groups that are unfortunately victimized, but are not being protected by the current set of statutes. And I think through the collection of that testimony, it would really be, I think, instructive and informative as far as, how the statutes can be rewritten or updated to ensure that, the full power of the state is being put forth to protect all folks and all persons from, all communities throughout Pennsylvania. And just to briefly touch on, yes, a lot of district attorneys are sort of gun shy when it comes to enforcing the law. And gratefully, it does provide the state legislature an opportunity there to investigate and to impeach. So I think in a lot of these jurisdictions where district attorneys are not using every tool in their toolbox to weed out discrimination, it really does provide, especially the democratically controlled state house, the ability to pursue impeachment, which the Republicans had no problem doing a couple years ago against the Philadelphia DA.
Okay, so you mentioned discrimination.
Mhm.
The Pennsylvania legislature for the last 10 to 20 years has been debating and attempting to pass the Pennsylvania Fairness Act. And in the
Mhm.
most recent iteration of it, there's massive cutouts for religious entities that they're
Mhm.
exempted from the law.
Right.
Do you agree with that position, or how do you come down on carve-outs for religious organizations regarding discrimination?
Well, I mean, I think here's the thing. I can start a church tomorrow, technically, and have that particular entity be excluded from a number of legal requirements that any other organization would otherwise be subjected to. So I think we have to have an open and honest conversation first and foremost about what is and what isn't a religious entity. Because I think, unfortunately, anytime you provide a little bit of relief, everybody under the sun tries to replicate that through how they're structured and how they present themselves to the public. So if it's a situation where you really truly do have a religious entity, an organization that has a time tested, just faith-based disagreement over a particular proposed law, that's one thing. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of times what you see is just the building up of structuring oneself or one's entity or organization in a particular way just so they can continue to practice hate and discriminatory practices, if I'm being 100% honest with you.
Very good. And in the closing minutes that we have, what is your sales pitch? What is your pitch to voters in your area to pull the lever, to check the box
Mhm.
for Dylan Altemara for Pennsylvania legislature?
Yeah, so I would just say that, if you're tired of the status quo, if you're tired of political candidates and, elected officials not understanding your plight in life, I would greatly appreciate your support. I think, and as this campaign will outline in the many months to come, I think, probably a little bit more of an insight to what people are dealing with. Um, in their day-to-day lives than most other folks currently in the legislature. I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 5 years old. I'm insulin dependent. I would consider myself very much working class. For a period of time in my life, when my mother became quite sick and my grandmother had a stroke, I was homeless. So, those are just some of the experiences that I bring to the table. And I think it's probably a lot unlike what most other folks on the circuit can draw from. And, in addition to those personal experiences, I'm somebody that's always willing and able to sit across from somebody to take in different points of view. And ultimately, I want to really champion truth telling. I think whether it's not just a situation where I'm going to go after Republicans. I think a true, honest, Public servant has to also sometimes police what goes on in their own party. And I think at this particular moment in time, because of campaign corruption, because of political corruption, both parties are very target-rich environments. So I think moving forward in the months to come, I just hope to be able to, be visible, be present, be everywhere, and provide folks with a vehicle to affect the types of change that will make their lives better.
Dylan, thank you very much for being on today's show.
Thank you,
Always
David,
a
for having
pleasure,
me.
and I'm sure we'll be inviting you back in the near future for a follow-up on some of the questions we asked earlier. So that's our
Sounds good.
show for today, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Stick around. We got plenty more great programming here on PEP Talks Uncut. We'll be back again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.